is only one perfect solution, but there are clues that will try to trick our team.
Hello there, everyone. My name is Crazy Caleb, and today we're going to be taking a look at each of the 3 Mahjong quizzes. So there have been 3 individual variants that have been released of the Mahjong quizzes. In this case, green is going to be representing a Mahjong Quiz Easy. The blue is going to be representing Mahjong Quiz Hard, and the red is going to be the Scrambled Variant. So now, this module is all based off of the same concept of Mahjong. This is based off of the game. Now, there is another another module called Mahjong, but this is going to be a little bit of a different concept from how it works. The original one was made by Tim Wee. This one is made by Sebi. So, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be covering each of these 3 modules. Now, both of them are all of them are quite fairly simple, but there are some kind of tricks that we need to understand here. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, I'm only going to be focusing on the Mahjong Quiz Easy manual, because if we take a look at the other 2 manuals, they really don't give you that much to do with. So all we're simply going to be doing is we're going to be focusing on the Mahjong Quiz Easy. This explains the ground rules of how essentially the module works, and how we're essentially going to be doing what we're going to do here. So we have a bunch of tiles here, which in this case are represented from the exact same module of Mahjong. This is going to be how the game works. I'm going to explain to you how this game works, instead of just the sort of matching tiles as we're all familiar with Mahjong. There's actually a little bit of a game that actually is a bit of a different rule set that you can potentially get here, and in this case, this is going to be a completely different game for you guys. That's what we're going to do here. So now, of course, Mahjong is a 4-player game of luck and skill, where the object of the game is to win points by completing valid hands. Now, the rules will vary depending on the style of Mahjong being played. In this case, this introduction really doesn't matter that much. It just kind of run down how Mahjong essentially works. The basic Mahjong rules will be in just a second, but most of the core rules will stay the same. Note that this manual will only cover the necessary rules to solve this module, and will leave out details for the sake of making the required rules easier to understand. So now, there's going to be a series of basic Mahjong rules, which are actually quite fairly simple to understand. So let's take a look here. So now, in Mahjong, there are 3 different suits with tiles who go from 1 to 9, and 1 suit whose tiles have no numeric value. And we're going to see the reference table below. So we have a series of 3 different sort of what's it called? These are 3 different suits for the tiles here. We have characters, in this case representing the sort of amount of dashes that we have, or the amount or the symbols that are present on the module. The balls or circles, which represent the sort of like the wheel, if people call them that. These are essentially just the circles, as you would imagine. You count. That's all you simply need to do for these. And for the bamboo, finally, all you simply need to do is count, with the exception being 8. 8 is a bit of a weird one, and 1 has the bird on it, which in this case, the bird is sitting on the branch right there. That's how you're going to count that one. So, and then finally, we have the honors down here. The honors are representing of the east, south, west, and north in this case. And then we also have the 3 different variants of dragons. In this case, white dragon, green dragon, and red dragon. This is all in the same module as Mahjong, so this is definitely going to be stuff that you've seen before, with the exception, of course, of some few tiles. In this case, down here in the counting row here. The only one that's going to be present is, of course, the bird, as we can see here, the bamboo one. And, of course, we have all of the different variants of the green dragons and the northeast, west, and south in this case. This stuff is not going to be present. That's all that matters. So now, let's actually focus on what exactly we're going to be doing with this module, and how exactly are we going to be solving this. So as we said, there are going to be 3 suits with tiles whose values go from 1 to 9, and 1 suit whose tiles have no numeric values, which I just explained. There are always going to be 4 copies of each tile, and what's going to happen is the goal of the game is to complete valid hands by taking turns drawing and discarding tiles. A valid hand has 14 tiles, which are used to make 4 sets of 3 tiles each, and 1 pair, with 2 exceptions, which we'll get into in just a second. And a set refers to 3 identical tiles. So in this case, we need to look at these 4 sets of 3 tiles. A set refers to 3 identical tiles, which in this case is represented by one of these guys. If I can find one. No, it appears not. Oh, you're looking right here. So in this case, we happen to have these 5 bamboos. That could count potentially as 1 individual set. These 5 bamboos together could count as 1 individual set, because they are 3 identical tiles. Now, they could also be 3 tiles of the same suit in a sequential order. In this case, if we take a look at this example, we have the wheels here. We have 2, 3, and 4. This could count as the set right here because they are in sequential order. But keep in mind of one thing, the possibility of 9 does not loop back to 1. We will never ever take a 9, so for example 8, 9, 1. If that was happen to be present on the module, which it shouldn't, this will never ever happen. This cannot happen, and this does not count as a set. So in this case, if we're trying to find a set, what we might do is we might place in a 7, for example. That could count as a set right there. But in this case, 9 does not loop back to 1. It never will, so to keep that in mind. This does not loop around. It is simply 1 through 9, and so on and so forth. So a pair refers to 2 identical tiles. This is going to be specifically only 2 identical tiles, not 2 in sequential order. That's only going to be referring to the sets. So keep that in mind. So what exactly are we going to be looking for here? So our goal is going to be trying to create these valid sets. And what we're going to essentially do is we're going to try and figure out all the possible movements that we can do. And as we can see, if we move down here, in this module, you are given a hand of 13 tiles that is 1 tile away from being a valid hand. And our task is to find all the possible tiles which can be added to it to complete that valid hand. So as we can see, our hand is currently represented by this top row here of smaller tiles, and all of these tiles down below are the options of which we can select to potentially submit into the module by pressing confirm here. These you will know when you've selected something when it's tinted in this sort of yellow background, and it will be unselected when it is simply white. That's the way that it works. So now, all we need to do is we need to figure out a series of different valid moves based off of the rules of which we know them as. Now, there are indeed 2 exceptions which can happen here. There are 2 types of hands which are exceptions to the 4 sets and one pair hand composition. And in this case, hopefully we can get to covering them today. I'm not sure if they will, because they are kind of rare, especially the 13 terminals. But what's going to be happening is that we have 2 different exceptions here. The 7 pairs is composed of 7 distinct pairs. So in this case, if there would happen to be a pair of everything except one card that is by itself, in that case, this would be 7 pairs, and there would only be one solution to that. Keep that in mind. And then next up, the 13 terminals. Now, the 13 terminals is a bit of a weird one. The hand is composed of every 1 and 9 from every suit, and 1 of every honor tile, and 1 extra copy of any of those 13 tiles. So if we take a look here, we have the ones here. So we have all of the ones, we have all of the 9s, and we have all of the honors, and there will be 1 additional tile of those 13. Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. All of these guys add up to 13. This would be counting as the 13 terminals. I have not seen this case ever pop up in the examples that I have done throughout the time that I've known this module, but it is possible to happen. Keep that in the back of your mind because that could potentially screw you over. So, and there is obviously no specific limit to how much you could be potentially sitting into the module, especially with some of the harder variants, which I will get into in just a minute. They have definitely had up to 6 or 7 possible submissions that I've seen. There is a lot of possible movements, and this module is very error-prone in that way. It is very easy to think that you have all of the solutions. However, you might be wrong, completely wrong. So now let's get into what exactly we need to do and some of the strategies I like to impose on this module, especially with the easier examples. Sometimes the harder examples, you might not be able to have such good strategies or luck with that. So let's get right into this. So now let's take a look. Let's clear the page. So let's try and figure out a series of different moves which we can essentially give us a valid hand. We need to find a way how to get the 4 sets of 3 tiles for the most part, and of course leaving us with 1 pair. Because as we see here, we have 3, 6, 9, 12, and then leaving us with the 2. All of these guys add up to 14 tiles. That's how this works. So now let's try and take a look and let's see what we can do here. And what I generally tend to do is with the easier examples, I tend to cross off bits of the board, bits of our hand, which we're not going to be interacting with at all. That's kind of the easy way that I like to look at this thing. Let me try my game volume up. It just happened to be very quiet right now. So what I tend to do is I tend to find areas that simply will never be, we will be exclusively not touching in this case. Now, an example of this could potentially be over here. If we happen to have a 4, 5, and 6, in this case being a sequential order, of a specific suit, and there's nothing else around it that is remotely close, we're simply going to leave this guy alone. And in this case, the bamboo of 4, 5, and 6, there's no other bamboos around it, so that means we're simply going to leave you alone, because that's already 1 set complete, because we have a 4, 5, 6, and that's going to be pretty much off limits. We don't really want to touch any of the bamboo. We want to focus on the other areas which could potentially have other sets that we can do. Now, let's take a look at the characters on the left side here, because potentially we could be actually just not looking at the middle at all. Actually, let's take a look at the middle too, because we have 6 individual tiles from the circle set here. So we have a 2, 3, 4, and a 6, 7, and an 8. Ooh, okay, this could be interesting. So we have a 2, 3, and a 4, and then we have a 6, a 7, and an 8. Now, since these guys each form their individual pairs here, in this case being a 6, 7, and 8, we have a 2, 3, 4, and then we have the 6, 7, and the 8. What this could potentially mean is that these guys are actually left alone as well. So what we can essentially be doing is we can actually be just looking over at the left side right over here. So now, all we simply are going to be focusing on is these characters right here, these last 4 that we have. Because we have 2, 3, 4, and then we have the 6, 7, and the 8. Each of these guys are going to be left alone because they actually form sets already. Because they are all consecutive tiles in the same suit. So let's take a look and see what we have left here. So we have a 1 and a 2 of these characters right here, but we also have 2 7s. Now, this 7 could represent our pair that we need right here. So these 7s, let's mark this as pair of 7s. That could be potentially just left alone because of the fact that we're not going to be focusing on consecutive values of the same set. Because of the fact that these this 1, 2, and 7 are too far away from each other. We're not going to worry about that. Remember, we're only going to be placing one individual tile down because it's 13 tiles, and we can have a valid hand of 14 tiles. So we're only going to be placing the possible answers of which we can potentially get a valid hand with. And in this case, if we were to plant a 4, 5, or 6 in any way, shape, or form, that would not work. So I believe we're going to be actually leaving the pair of 7s alone, which in this case, if we take a look at the 1 and 2, what we need to do is we need to complete 4 sets of 3 individual tiles. And right now, we have 3 sets of those 3 tiles. And we have our 1 pair that we needed to take care of as well. So what this means is that we need to take care of 1 remaining set, which, if we were to place down a 3, what this would give us is this would give us a 1, 2, and a 3, which means that all we would essentially need to do is we would need to place down a 3 of the character here. In this case, we're representing 3 dashes. And that should do everything for us. There should be no other questions about this. And as far as I'm aware, there should be no other solutions. So let's hit confirm, see if we're right. And just like that, we are. So what we essentially did was this was the only option of which we could have to complete our hand here. Everything that we saw here, 2, 3, 4, the 6, 7, and 8, were all far apart from each other. Far enough apart from each other that they were essentially going to be building a sets. They were separated by no 5 being present. If there was a 5 being present, we would have a little bit of a different issue here. That would be a much, much different story, and potentially that could cause some problems. However, in this case, we were able to generate the 4, 5, and 6 from the bamboo. The bamboo, that was all of the bamboo in that set. We did not need to worry about anything else. The 2, 3, 4, and then the 5, and then the 6, 7, and 8. That was all in that set. Those each generated 2 individual sets from that suit. And in this case, we were able to simply focus on this one individual set suit over here, which in this case gave us the pairs that we needed and the 1, 2, 3 final set that we needed to solve this module and get a valid hand. So that was perfect. So now let's take a look at another example here. And that's essentially what you want to do, is for these easier examples, these really, really nice ones, you want to cross off as many options as you possibly can, with making sure that you keep in mind that you have a specific amount of sets, or you happen to have a couple of pairs already covered. Keep that in mind. So now let's take a look and let's see what we need to do here. So taking a look, let's cross off anything on the right that we could potentially get rid of here. In this case, 7, 8, and 9 in the bamboo set. Those guys are sequential, the sequential order. So this means that we're simply going to be ignoring these guys. That means we have a 7, 8, 9 as a set. Good. That's already another one taken care of. So now let's take a look and see what we have in the middle here. We have a 3, 4, 5, and then we have 2 pairs of 9s. Now, this 3, 4, 5 could be one of our sets right here, 3, 4, 5, and then we could also take care of our pair here as well, in this case being the 9s, the pair of 9s. Okay, now, with this in mind, all we simply need to do is we need to figure out 2 more sets of 3 tiles. So we're going to be taking a look at these 5 leftmost here, because I don't think we have to interact with any of these guys on the right side anymore. Because if we did interact with any of them, that would cause problems, which we do not want to have. So now, let's take a look and see what we have left. Currently on the character set, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, each of them in consecutive order. Now, what we could potentially do is we can do a couple different options, and this is where things get a little bit interesting here. So in this case, let's write out we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, what we essentially want to do is we want to try and place essentially an option that can give us a, we want to look at the subsequential order in this case. We want to take a look at the sequential order rather, and what we want to do is we want to figure out how we can do this. Now, I'm immediately going to tell you there is two options of which you can potentially do in this case. Here's what we can do. First off, no, it's not 9. It's not going to be 9 at all, because 9 does not loop back to 1, as I remember saying. So 9 simply is not going to be looping back to 1. So in this case, what exactly do we do? Well, immediately, first off, right off the bat, you might be thinking, we can just simply place down a 6. Yes, we actually can place down a 6, because if we do 1, 2, 3, and then we do a 4, 5, and then we add a 6 to this, this would give us 2 individual sets right here. That's good so far. Now, let's mark the 6, because that's a potential solution which we can have right there. Let's mark that 6. So now let's set it back to the original state. This is our second solution. Let's say if we were to place a 3 in between. That is our second set. So we want to select the 3. So now, this is where things get a little bit interesting. Because of the fact that there is the possibility of us having, there's going to be 4 copies of each tile that can be present on the board. In some cases, like for example on this hard variant, if we take a look at our hand currently right now, we have 4 7s and we have 4 5s. This means that we cannot place down a 5 or a 7 because of the fact that there are only 4 copies of every single tile. However, in this case, we can have more than one copy of a specific tile because of the fact that there's only one present on the board right now in our hand. So what we can do is we can place the 6 obviously at the end to create 1, 2, 3, and then a 4, 5, 6. Or we can do a 1, 2, 3, and then we can do a 3, 4, 5. In this case, I'm focusing on the center point between each of these guys right here to give us a couple more sets. That is another potential option of which we can do, and it's one that definitely can trick people up. Okay, if we hit confirm, it solves the module. So now, that's good to go. So let's take a look at one last example here for the easy ones, and then we'll start hitting on the hard variant and the scrambled variant. Now, keep in mind that the scrambled variant is not really all that tricky itself. It's actually not too bad. It is very similar to how the hard works. It's just in these examples here, as we've seen, these are all ordered numerically by the way that they are in each of the suits. It already takes care of the ordering for us. However, in Scrambled, as we can see, we have the 2 over here, we have the 8 behind, we have the 9 all over the place. It's not in the correct formation. And one thing that's been very, very common about how these guys generate, especially the Scrambled ones specifically, is that they always tend to be in the exact same suit, and they always tend to be numerical values, and I'm not sure if that's a module design, but I have a hunch that it is based off of the module design, that it's always going to be focusing on one of these first 3 tile suits, and it's only going to be generating numbers from there. I have never seen a case where we've had any honors present in the Scrambled set, so keep that in mind that this is going to be important. So now, let's take a look at our last easy example, and let's see what we get here. Now, oh my, okay, I think this actually, yes, this is one of the cases that are exceptions to which we could be looking at here. This actually is a rarer one to appear. However, 7 hands, from what I've found, is much more common than the 13 terminals. I have not had a 13 terminals pop up yet. However, I have had a 7 pairs pop up. This is a 7 pairs example here, because as we can see on the module right now, there is no sets of subsequent values. There's no sets of 3 or more matching identical values, and in this case, there is a series of 6 different pairs with one little curious guy right here being left all on its lonesome. So now all we simply need to do for 7 pairs is we need to select the guy who does not have a pair with it. So that'll be that guy. We confirm, and just like that is a solved module. It is a very, very easy case to get. It's one of the nicer ones that I actually quite like, and it's very easy to tell when you actually have that on the module. And all you simply need to do is you need to select the one that does not have the pair in it. It's very nice and it's very simple, so keep that in mind. So now let's take a look here. Let's take a look at the harder variant here. Now this one can be a bit brutal, I will say. And it's rather quite tough sometimes. However, it is still numerically ordered. It is not scrambled, so thankfully we don't have to worry about that. And in this case, it's all going to be focusing on the suit of the sticks or bamboo. Okay, interesting. So let's actually write down everything in this case, because I want to make sure that we get everything right. So we have 3, 4, 5, 5, 5, 5. Then we have a 6. Then we have 4 7s. Then we have an 8, and then we have a 9. This one has quite a few options of which we could potentially be looking at here. Okay, let's take a look. And let's try and break this thing apart as well as as best as we can. So let's try and do things. So what we could potentially do here is we could potentially do a 3, 4, and a 5 as a starting value. We could do a 5, 6, and 7, and then a 7, 8, and 9. However, what would happen is, in this case, it would happen to be not correct. Because what would happen is that we would get a 3, 4, 5 on its lonesome right here. Then we get a 5, 6, 7. Then we get a 7, 8, 9. And at this point, we're actually going to be left with 2 pairs. This is not at all what we want to do. So we want to back it up. That's not going to work. So now let's take a look and see what else we can do. So we can do a 4, 5, 5. Or excuse me, 4, 5, 6. So we do 4, 5, 6. However, that leaves us 3 on its own. But here's where we can do things. We can do a 7, 8, 9. Now, what we could potentially do here is we could potentially take a look at, and we can actually put in a 3 here. Now, I've been thinking, what am I doing with this 3 essentially? So, if we take a look here, what we essentially did was we did a 4, a 5, and a 6, and that gave us our first set right here. We can do a 7, 8, and 9, and that gave us our second set right here. Now, we have our pairs of our triplets of 3 5s, and then we have 3 7s in this case. So now all we simply need to do is we have our 4 sets of 3. In this case, if we were to add another 3, for example, this would give us our pair that we need. That's what we can do for this one. Now, I believe this one actually is rather quite a nasty example. So we've already marked down 3, and this is kind of where things get a little bit interesting. At this point, I would advise you, number 1, this is where sort of my second strategy comes in. Now, this can be a little bit of a brute force method that might be a little bit questionable at times, but essentially what you can do is you can essentially just try and guess, guess all the options that are present within this module. And that, of course, can potentially lead you to good results. It actually is quite helpful to make sure that you haven't overthought anything, because that is very easy to do, and it is very error prone to miss something. You're going to find yourself missing more than you are over jumping a Mahjong case. So let's just simply focus on the suit of the bamboo set. That's what we want to do for this one, and we want to essentially try and plug everything in, because it's going to help us make our life a little bit easier. We know for a fact that every answer that we're going to get is bamboo. We do not need to worry about the rest of the stuff because of the fact that this is the only suit that is present on the module. So now, let's take a look. Now, the 1 is not going to help us at all, because immediately number 1, the fact that 2 is not present on the set here, we're never going to be able to get a consecutive value as a sequence with the 1. That's just not going to work. The 2 not being present on the normal hand here is simply going to screw with us. That's just not going to work. So 1 is already out of the picture. Next up, 2. Now, if we were to place a 2 here, for example, we could get 2, 3, 4 as one set right here. We could get a series of 5s. Then we could do perhaps a 5, 6, 7, and then a 7, 8, 9. Now, let's take a look. So we do 5, 6, 7. So we said we agreed that we do 5, 6, 7. Then we do a 7, 8, 9. And then we do a 5, 5, 5 as our final set right here. And then we have a pair of 7s. This is a good option right here. So we can actually do 2 as an option. So now let's reset our board back to what we originally had here. This is why kind of writing it down is also a good idea too. I would highly recommend this. So now we've already confirmed 3. We've already done this before. We had the pair of 3s. Everything else was perfectly fine. That's important. Okay. Now, this is where another process is easy to cross off. Remember, as I said, we have 4 individual tiles. We know for a fact that we're never going to be placing a 5 or a 7. That's just a fact. Because of the fact that there are already 4 in our hand of each of them, we're simply never going to be touching these. So we can simply skip over those and not have to worry about them at all. That's perfect. So now let's take a look at 4. Let's plug in another 4 here, and let's see what we can do with this. Now, we can do a 3, 4, 5 as our first subsequent set. So 3, 4, 5. We could potentially do a 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6. 4, a 5, and a 6. And now I'm actually starting to see things come together. That's I did not mean to type that. Then we can do potentially a 7, 8, 9. Pop that down. Then we have a set of 7s, and then we have a pair of 5s. Just like that. That is another potential hand that we could be doing here. So 4 is an option. Okay, so now let's Control Z our way back to the beginning here. Let's get rid of that 4. And now let's take a look at number 6. Let's take a look at 6. So we have a couple more options which we compare. We're going to be focusing on the 6, the 8, and the 9. So let's take a look. So if we were to plug in another 6, let's see what we would get. Okay, so we can do 3, 4, 5 as a 1 right here. We get rid of those 3, that 4, and the 5. Bam, just like that. We could potentially do a 5, 6, 7. Or, no, we don't even need to worry about that. We could do a 7, 8, and 9. Then we have our 3 pairs of 5, our 3s of 7, and then we have our 6s, our pair of 6s. This means that 6 could be an option here. And as you can see, we are already having 4 individual options, which could potentially lead us down. This is the amazing part of doing sort of the brute force method and plugging in each of our individual options. It's covering our asses, that's for sure. And making sure that we do not strike, because I easily could have been like, oh yeah, let's do just one of these 2 solutions here. That should be good. Then happen to strike, because in this case, we're not quite done yet, which means that we could potentially not have an answer. If I were to hit confirm right now, as you can see, we are not done yet. So let's get rid of our 6 that we just had. And now we said that we were going to skip over 7s as well, because there's already 4 copies in this suit. So now let's take a look at 8 and 9 as our last options here. So let's take a look. So let's plug in an 8. So if we were to do our 3, 4, 5 as we normally do, 3, 4, 5, we get rid of those right there. Okay. Now, if we were to do a 5, 6, and 7, this could be a bit interesting. Let's take a look. See, now I'm quite curious. I'm curious because I wonder if I can do a pair of 8s. However, that affects the 9. That actually affects the 9 right there. So what we could potentially do is we could potentially do a 6, 7, 8, and then a 7, 8, 9. 6, 7, 8, and then we have a 7, 8, 9. So we get rid of a 6, 7, and an 8. Then we do a 7, 8, and 9. We have 3 sets. We have our 4th set from the 5, 5, 5, and then we have our pair from the 7s. That is another possible solution that we can have right there. This is another important example that we were able to cover our butts with and prevent us from getting a strike. Obviously, that strike was for an example, as we saw from there. Please mind that. But that is another one. And finally, for our last example, could we plug in a 9, and could this give us a potential hand right here? 9. So now let's do 3, 4, 5 as we normally do. 3, 4, 5 I think is pretty much guaranteed to be the first part of the solution. Perfect. We know for a fact that we're going to be using one of the 5s. We know for a fact we're going to be using one of the 7s. That's amazing. So now, I have a hunch. I have a hunch that we essentially don't need to worry about the 9s at all, and we can actually just do a 6, 7, and 8 and get away with it. Because the 6, 7, and 8 could leave us with a 5, 5, 5, a 7, 7, 7, and a 9, 9 as a pair. We have our 4 sets right here, and we have a pair being the 9s. 9 is also another potential solution. We have done all of these guys here, and hopefully that should be everything. It is indeed. Wow, that was quite a tricky one. That was indeed a very, very, very tricky one that we just got there. So that is exactly what it means by this module can be a lot trickier on the harder variant. And hopefully all that makes sense. It's just essentially trying to find things in a different way. So now let's take a look at our final variant, Scrambled. So now, as the name suggests, this entire thing has been scrambled. However, it's not really any different. It's just you essentially want to reorder these guys, and you really just don't want to have to worry about it. So in this case, I generally tend to start from the lower ones, and then I go up. So now let's do a 2, 2, 2. So we have 3 2s on here. Do we have any 3s? We do have 1 3. So it's going to be 1 3. Do we have any 4s? We have 1 4. That looks like it's just going to be 1 4. Okay. Now for 5s, we have 3 of those. 1 2 3. Because we have 5 right there, and right there. Do we have a 6? We have 2 of those. 6 6. 7s. We do have 1. Do we have 8s? We do have 1 8. And do we have any 9s? We have 1 9. Now, if we count all of these cards up, we have tiles up, we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13. This means we have everything taken care of. Perfect. So now, with this point, if we take a look here, we can't cross out anything that doesn't have 4 copies in it, because every single one of them has a maximum of 3 copies. That's good. So that means we can't cross out anything. That actually doesn't help us at all. So now we kind of want to do a little bit of brute force, because we know for a fact that they're going to be in the exact same set. Suit. This means that we are simply going to be focusing on this row here. And now, because of the fact that there are 2s in between, that means we have the possibility of us being using a 1 potentially here. So that's going to be what we're going to start with. Since all of the numbers except 1 are used, that means we can potentially be using all these numbers here. So now, let's say if we were to plug in a 1. Let's just do the exact same thing that we did with the complicated version, the hard version. So if we were to do a 1, 2, 3, for example, 1, 2, and 3, that forms the set. Now these 2s could potentially form a pair. That could be leading somewhere. Okay. However, I think we're going to run into a bit of a problem here, and that's what concerns me right here. If we do a 4, a 5, and a 6, let's do a 4, 5, and 6, that could form another set. However, 4, 5, and 6, we sort of stumble into a bit of a problem here. And the problem is that we have already figured out, we could have already figured out that there would have been pairs here. That is a red flag for us. Because of the fact that 5s are also potentially forming a pair here, and because we're not able to complete any sets and using all the cards. So in this case, 1 is simply not going to be possible in this answer right here. So that means that we're simply not going to be using 1 at all, so now we can simply ignore you. So now, let's take a look at 2, and we can use 2 because of the fact that there is still the possibility of there being 4 individual copies. We only have 3 present in our hand. That means we have the possibility of there being 1 more. So that's potential use. So let's use 2. Okay, we can do a set of 2, 3, 4. Let's do a set of 2, 3, and 4. Now we can do potentially a 7, 8, 9. Just cross off that right there. So 7, 8, 9. And then we kind of run into a bit of a problem here. This one's a bit of a weird case. So let's back it up here. Oh, no. We actually don't run into a bit of a weird case. We have the 2s, and we have the 5s, and then we have the pairs of 6s. Pair of 6s. So in this case, 2 can actually be used because we get a 2, 3, 4. We get a 7, 8, 9. Then we have the set of 3 tiles that are 3 2s. Then we have 3 5s, and then we have 2 6s. This means that this is going to be a set. 2 is a possible answer here. So we're going to be marking off 2. That's going to be good. Let's Control-Z everything. Let's set it back to our original state. Let's get rid of that 2. And now let's take a look at 3. So if we were to plug in 3 right now, let's see what would happen. So potentially what we can do is we could potentially do actually leave the 2s alone for right now. That could count as a pair of its own. The 3 could potentially count as our pair. So let's leave that alone. 4, 5, and 6. This is kind of where things get a little bit weird. That 4 is in a rather quite nasty position. We could potentially do actually a 3, 4, 5, but that wouldn't help me because that would leave us with 1, 3, which we would be unable to use later on. So this might not be a possible answer here. This definitely looks like it's going to be we're definitely be getting a lot less answers than we did on this one up here. So let's take a look at another example. And I don't believe it's going to be another 3 because if we do 7, 8, 9, we're left with 4, 5, 6. We didn't have 2 6s, did we? Wait, let me make sure. 6 and a 6. Okay, we did have 2 6s, right? Okay. So actually, that's not going to work. I don't think 3 is going to be an option here. Let me make sure of that. 2, 3. We would have to use a 4, 5, 6 to get rid of the 4. That would not work. Yeah, because we already have. If we had 3 and a 5 be both a pair, that would not work for us. So 3 is not an option here. So let's get rid of you. And now let's take a look at 4. Let's plug in 4 here. If we were to do potentially 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4 is a possible answer. So 2, 3, and 4. Potentially do 4, 5, 6. Already that's going to be raising a red flag for us because of the fact that we cannot use, or maybe we can. Hold on. So we do 4, 5, 6. So a 4, a 5, and a 6. Then we would do 5, 6, 7. That's not going to work out for us, I can already tell you. Because we lose the ability to have subsequent sequences with that second 6 being gone. So this is not going to work for us. So 4 is not going to be an option right now. So now let's try and plug in 5. Let's see what we get with this. We only have one 4 on here. So let's plug in another 5. So we could potentially leave, we could actually leave we could actually do 2, 3, 4, for example. We could have the 7, 8, 9, of course. Now, it might not be 2, 3, 4. It might not be 2, 3, 4 that we're going to be using here. It might be 5, 5, 5. It might be a 5, 6, 7. Or maybe a 4, 5, 6. Then a 5, 6, 7, then an 8, 9. That's not going to work either. That 5 is not going to work. Because that messes with us. This is a very, very interesting example. I don't think it's going to be a 5. Let's cross you off. And now let's take a look at one last example. Let's try 6. 6 could potentially work for us. We do 3, 4, 5, then we do 7, 8, 9. Oh, this actually might work right here. 3, 4, 5, then we do a 7, 8, 9. We get rid of those. So 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. And now we're left with triplet, triplet, pair. That works for us. So 6 works for us right there. We're going to mark off 6. Now let's continue on. We have a 7, 8, and 9 to go to. Let's continue what we were doing here. So now let's get rid of one of our 6s because we only want 2. And now let's try 7. So if we were to plug in a 7 here, 3, 4, 5 we could potentially do. 3, 4, 5. We could do a... This might be an interesting one. Let's do a 7, 8, 9, and then we do a 5, 6, 7. So let's mark off what we have so far. So 3, 4, 5 we get rid of. We get rid of the 7, 8, 9. Then we get rid of a 5, 6, 7. That's going to cause problems. That's not going to work for us. So that's going to be proven not to work for us. So let's back it up, and we're going to get rid of our 1, 7. That's not going to work. Now, if we were to plug in an 8, let's take a look at 8. If we were to do a 7, 8, 9, I think that would actually not help at all. And I can already see where that could go wrong. If we were to do a 7, 8, 9, we would already lose that bridge of getting rid of that last 8. That means that this is not going to work. 8's not going to be a possibility here. And let's try finally our last option of 9. Let's see if this works. So now, we could potentially actually leave the 9s alone. This could actually just be a pair of its own right there. And what we can do is we could do a 6, 7, 8. 6, 7, 8 potentially. Then we could do a 4, 5, 6. And then perhaps a 3, 4, 5. No, I don't think that's actually going to work either. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. So hold on. Let's do a 7, 8, 9. 6, 7, 8. We get rid of those. 6, 7, 8. We have a 4, 5, 6. And I can already see that this is going to be potentially forming a wrong option here because we already have 2 pairs. This is not going to work. The 2 and the 3 do not work. So this means that this is not going to work out the way that I want it to. We're out of options here. Now, I believe with all of this being done, I believe we have our correct answer just simply being the 2 and the 6. So let's hit confirm. Hope we're right.
I'm afraid not.
And we're not. Interesting. So we might have overlooked something here. I want to say it was either the 5 or the 9. It might be 5, and I just accidentally did it in the wrong way. That's what's hard about this module, is it's very easy to mess up, I will say. Easily. So let's get rid of that 9. We don't want that 9. Now, let me get back to you on this. Let me see what I did wrong here. 3, 4, 5 could be potentially a set right there. 7, 8, 9 is another set right there. So we can get rid of you. We can get rid of you. Oh, how did I miss this? It is a native 5. So yeah, I totally glanced over this. I totally did this wrong. I apparently must have just overlooked this, and it's very easy to do this, keep in mind you. Our last 2 sets, we have formed 2 sets here. We have 3, 4, 5, and we have the 7, 8, 9. Our last 2 sets are going to be the 2, 2, 2, and then the 5, 5, 5, and then this is going to be our last pair of the 6 and the 6. This should hopefully solve the module right here, and just like that is a solved module. Hope all of this made sense. It's not too hard of a module to understand. It's just a little bit trickier to understand how the logic works of it all, and especially finding the answers can be very tricky in itself. Apologies for the mistake. I totally overlooked that. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to stay crazy, stay cool, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.